2b. 2b is actually a little bit more complicated than it looks. There's also two ways to get to the exact same answer, which is weird. Anyway, so I have, and that's because sine and cosine are so related to each other. I look at this at first, and I kind of say, oh gosh, I don't know how to do this. And then I think a little bit more, and I say, oh snap. I know that sine of something derives to cosine of something. So if I let this be my u, then it's got the derivative of the u right here, or at least a multiple of it. So that's how I'm going to go and solve this. You could do it as well with cosine being the u and sine being the du, and because of how squares work, it works. But anyway, let's just do it with a sine because I want to do positive numbers. So I'm going to let u be cosine 3x. So let me write that out. U equals cosine, come on. I clearly am going to make u be sine of 3x. The derivative of u is, well, I got some guts rule, 3. Derivative of, that's the derivative of the inside, 3x. Derivative of sine is cosine. And then I keep my 3x on the inside like that. Notice this is a multiple of that guy. This one's tricky. So I need to divide by 3, which gives me 1/3 du equals cosine 3x. The reason I do that is because there's no coefficient out front of this, so when I have the cosine here, I have no coefficient as well. Now, notice that this shows up here, and then this shows up here. So I'm going to replace the cosine of 3x with that, and I'm going to replace the sine of 3x with that. So I'll go ahead and do that. This gives me is that it's equal to integral from 0 to pi over 4. Talked a little bit in 1a about things that we're actually doing that are not totally right, because we haven't talked about it yet, but it doesn't make a difference in how we get the answer to this problem. And we'll talk about that when we get back from break. Anyway, so the integral from 0 to pi over 4 of u, which is this, and then which gets replaced by that, and then the 1/3 u replaces that times 1/3 of, so the 1/3 du. So watch what happens here. I get equal to integral, and remember this is x equal to 0 to x equal to pi over 4. 1/3 comes out front, and then I get a u du. Now this, it's funny, you know, we did all this work to get rid of sines and cosines, now we have u du. This is actually probably a really easy problem, although you may not recognize it as that. This is really u to the 1. How do I integrate u to the 1 with respect to u? Well, I use power rule. So what I get is u squared, bump it up by 1. And then I need to have a 1/2 out front to balance it. So that would be this whole part right here. And then I need to multiply it by the 1/3 that's out front. Now this needs to get evaluated from x equals 0 to x equal to pi over 4. So now I'm going to sub my u in. Remember, this is the value that I used for u. So this gives me, it turns out to be 1/6 sine squared of 3x, evaluated from 0 to pi over 4. This isn't too bad. You'll see why. I'll go ahead and write it all the way out. What I get is 1/6 times sine squared of 3 pi over 4. Remember, that is a 45-degree multiple of 3 pi over 4. That's what I'm going to use there. Minus 1/6 sine squared of 3 times 0. So this actually isn't so bad. Don't forget your equal signs. So I'm doing sine squared, which means that sine can be positive or negative, but since I'm squaring it, if it's negative, it's going to become positive. So I just really care that this is a multiple of 45 degrees. If I was doing it all out, it would be that angle right there, which sine is actually positive for anyway. But I know it's 45 degrees, so I know it's root 2 over 2. I know that from my unit circle. So I have root 2 over 2, but it's got to be squared, and then multiplied by 1/6. And then this is easy. Sine of 0, well, that's here. It's the y-coordinate, so it's just minus 0. Which, now I just need to square this. Actually, if this was the AP test, you could leave it like that. I'd almost encourage you to leave it like that so you don't screw something up. If it was a multiple choice, you'd probably have to multiply it all the way out. But, so I get 1/6. Root 2 squared is times 2. 2 squared is 4. So this is really 1/6 times 1/2, which is equal to 1/12. Ooh.